Please consider helping this poor, frail woman, my husband pleaded, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. I stared at Eric, unsure whether to laugh or scream. Frail? His mother, who always found a way to get what she wanted, hardly seemed helpless. And yet, I agreed. Back then, I had no idea that this decision would destroy my marriage. I am Amanda. My husband's name is Eric, and he is 2 years younger than I am. His lack of caution often causes me a great deal of distress. We began our relationship when I was 27 years old, at a matchmaking event where we both hoped to find a life partner. Before Eric, I dated men who were either uninterested in marriage or struggling financially. But Eric was different. During our time together before marriage, he would always offer to carry my bags and take me out to eat, going out of his way to be kind. Later, I discovered that Eric showed the same attentiveness toward his sister, Diana, so he must have become accustomed to treating women this way. Even after marriage, his approach never changed, although his priorities certainly did. It became more noticeable than when we were just dating. I had initially believed he was being especially considerate, solely toward me. In Eric's family, there is his mother, his father, though they are divorced, and his sister, Diana. A few years ago, after a fierce argument, Eric's parents split up, which left his mother living alone. Because of this, she visits our apartment quite frequently. One day she showed up, complaining about her struggles. I'm having a hard time financially. Your father left me, and I don't know what to do. Please, Eric, come home. How am I supposed to manage on my own, sweetheart? She begged, tears in her eyes. Moved by her desperate appeals, Eric repeatedly said to me, "What do you think of us moving into my mother's house?" Indeed, his mother had no job or stable income. She might have received some compensation from the divorce settlement, but she still had trouble covering daily expenses and the cost of maintaining the house. When Eric lived with her before our marriage, there was no problem, but once he moved out to live with me, she was left completely alone. My husband started begging me daily, "There's plenty of room at my mother's place, and I'm not going to make you do all the chores. Wouldn't you consider living with her?" He even teared up as he pleaded, "Amanda, please think of helping this frail old woman." I was taken aback that he described her as frail, but realizing how difficult her situation was, I began to worry about my mother-in-law as well. In the end, I reluctantly agreed to move into her house. Upon hearing this, Eric and his mother embraced in delight. Although I reminded myself that living together might not be so bad if it made them happy, I secretly wished to spend my newlywed days alone with my husband. Nevertheless, despite being recently married, we ended up sharing a roof with Eric's mother. Both Eric and I work, but to be honest, my husband was never particularly skilled at his job. His true passion has always been perfecting the art of making the perfect burger, with the dream of opening his own burger shop one day. To pursue this dream, he was apprenticing at a burger restaurant, which consumed a great deal of his time. While I respected his dedication, it inevitably left him with less time for family. He assured me it was temporary, even signed a promissory note, promising to pay me back once his dream became reality. During the first month living with Eric's mother, she expressed gratitude that we had come to stay. Yet once our work schedules ramped up, she seemed to regard the house as her exclusive domain, and she began speaking to me rudely. "Amanda, don't throw plastic bottles in that trash can. Have you been living under a rock all this time? I can't believe you can't even separate garbage properly. What on earth did your parents ever teach you?" my mother-in-law snapped. Her scolding left me little choice but to say, "I'm sorry." However, I'm not clueless about sorting waste. The truth is, I simply didn't know which bins in her house were meant for specific types of trash. When we moved in, we had a lot of packaging and boxes to dispose of, and I tried to separate everything correctly. Initially, my mother-in-law herself said, "Don't worry, I'll handle the sorting later. But each time I dropped a plastic bottle in the wrong bin, she complained, while saying absolutely nothing when Eric did the exact same thing. I do separate the garbage on collection days, yet she persists in admonishing me. It was beginning to feel more like harassment than helpful instruction. On top of that, she started demanding more housework from me, even though I can't possibly prepare lunch at midday while juggling my job. When I firmly told her, "It's impossible for me," she insisted. "Don't say impossible. As a daughter-in-law, you must do whatever I ask." I was shocked by such an attitude, thinking, who was it that begged us in tears to move in? Perhaps this arrangement was a mistake from the start. She probably only wanted to secure financial help from her son, and I, an unwanted daughter-in-law, was just in the way. While I was grappling with my mother-in-law's hostility, my company announced the possibility of remote work. It wasn't mandatory for every employee, but rather an optional trial to determine whether full-scale implementation might be beneficial. Hoping to appease my mother-in-law, I chose to work from home, thinking it would allow me to make the lunches she wanted and manage some housework. Yet, even when I did more chores and cooked meals, her attitude never improved. In fact, she grew more vocal about her irritation. "If only my daughter-in-law weren't here, the atmosphere in this house would be so much better. I'm at my wit's end," she complained, deeply hurting my feelings. I found household tasks in that home far more difficult than normal. In particular, Eric was extremely disorganized. He wouldn't sort his own laundry or toss out his garbage, so I had to gather his clothes from his room every time. He accepted my efforts like it was expected, and then he would complain, "Why can't I find my favorite socks? They're still hanging up to dry, but I want to wear them today. You're too slow with the laundry. You need to work harder at household chores." The fact that he calmly expressed such dissatisfaction baffled me. It was he who refused to manage his own laundry, so why was he blaming me? His words stunned me, and my mother-in-law agreed with him. "That's right. Amanda is home all day, so why can't she handle all the household tasks properly?" she said with a pointed tone. Their manner suggested they were mocking me, as if they had no concept of how much I was doing to keep everything running. The shock continued when my mother-in-law and Eric said something truly astonishing. "Now that Diana is coming back, it will be embarrassing to have an incompetent daughter-in-law around. I can't imagine what she'll say." Eric chimed in. "I'm sure Diana has become quite responsible. If she sees how clumsy my wife is, she'll probably laugh at me." It was only then that I found out Diana was coming back home. Nobody had told me previously. Diana is Eric's biological sister, my sister-in-law, and she got married 2 years ago. She lives with her husband, and I have rarely interacted with her. Yet from Eric's and his mother's comments, I sensed Diana also looked down on me. I wondered if there was anyone in this family who would treat me decently. On the day Diana arrived, my mother-in-law was beside herself with excitement. My sister-in-law walked in with her luggage, plopped down on the living room sofa, and exclaimed, "There's nothing like being home." When I offered her a drink, she responded with a surprise, "Who is this person?" She acted as if she had no idea who I was, despite having come to my wedding. Before I could say a word, my mother-in-law interjected, "Diana, this is Eric's wife. She can't do housework well, always looks uptight, and never gets anything right. She used to have a job, but now she just lazes around the house." I was appalled. I hadn't quit my job at all. I had merely switched to remote work for the sake of accommodating everyone in the house. Even though I had explained that to both Eric and my mother-in-law, it appeared as though none of it had registered. Diana, believing her mother's account, scoffed. "Oh, so you have an unemployed person living here? Why would you keep her around?" Then she added, "She won't understand what real hardship is until it slaps her in the face," laughing in a scornful way. My mother-in-law agreed, saying, "Exactly." She then turned to me and said, "Amanda, listen carefully. Diana is pregnant and wants to have her baby here in our home. This revelation stunned me, since nobody had mentioned Diana's pregnancy or her plan to move back in. It obviously meant we would face additional financial burdens, yet I had been kept in the dark entirely. The next statement from my mother-in-law was even more shocking. Because Diana is going to be living here for her pregnancy, we have no use for an unemployed daughter-in-law. Leave this house before she fully moves in, and if you don't pack up, I'll toss out all your things myself. Dumbfounded, I asked, "Are you serious?" Part of me actually felt relief at the thought of leaving, because it was preferable to being disrespected daily in that household. I assumed that without me providing help or money, they would be the ones struggling. But my mother-in-law remained oblivious to her own predicament, saying, "We'll be just fine without you." "Then I'll leave," I said, completely fed up with the humiliations from both my mother-in-law and Diana, along with Eric's willingness to side with them at every turn. My husband, who had once acted like a perfect gentleman during our dating days, was now utterly indifferent toward me. He reserved all his sympathy and care for his sister and mother. Maybe during our dates, he had only played the kind soul, because it was a habit he had developed while living with them. But since moving into his mother's house, he had absolutely no kindness left to give me. Possibly I had only been his financial supporter, helping him chase his burger shop dream. I wasted no time contacting a certain person. The first thing I said was, "I'm divorcing Eric, so from now on, please collect the rent from him or his mother." When they asked for details, I explained that I had been told to leave the house because Diana was coming back to have her baby, and so I had no choice but to get out. They apologized and said they would handle all future arrangements on my behalf. After that, I spent some time at a hotel while looking for a place of my own. During this period, my husband began calling me in a panic. "What do you mean you want a divorce?" he asked. "And what's all this talk about repaying?" I thought we were doing fine. I couldn't believe he would say we were doing fine, given that he had just pushed me out for his sister's sake. I shot back, "Doing fine? You kicked your wife out so your sister wouldn't feel inconvenienced, and you're wondering what's wrong with that." "Kicked you out?" he repeated. "That's not what happened. Didn't you decide on your own to leave so Diana wouldn't be stressed?" Clearly, my mother-in-law and my sister-in-law had convinced him that I went away of my own accord. In reality, they had threatened to toss out my possessions if I didn't leave immediately, so I had to flee before they could carry out their threat. I then asked Eric, "By the way, did your father come by the house?" He sounded confused. "Yeah, he showed up, saying something about rent, but we own the house. There's no rent, right?" Upon hearing this, I practically shouted, "What? Didn't you remember the arrangement we talked about when we moved in? When your parents divorced, the house went to your father's name, but your mother refused to vacate it. In the end, it was agreed that she would pay $2,000 a month in rent. That's how it's been handled all this time." Eric was stunned. "That's impossible. I've never paid rent myself," he said. "That's because your income was low due to your burger apprenticeship," I explained. "I've been the one covering the $2,000 each month. I used to give that money to your mother, who then transferred it from her own account. I informed you of this right at the start." It amazed me that his mother seemed to have completely forgotten where the monthly rent money came from. The moment I decided to separate, I stopped paying, which triggered his father's visit. "Now that I've cut it off, your mother has to pay," I told him. "That's why your father stopped by. He wanted to speak with her about it." Eric seemed rattled, but I couldn't sympathize with him. He had been so busy catering to his mother and focusing on his training that he never bothered to appreciate my contributions. For so long, he had treated me like an afterthought, and now he was acting bewildered and helpless. I added, "Also, your father should have the divorce papers I signed. Make sure you handle the money you owe. I'm finished here." "Wait," Eric asked, his voice tense. What's this promissory note all about? I released a long sigh. How could he forget such important matters so easily? That note was your idea, remember? You told me, I'm going to dedicate myself to becoming a burger shop owner, so you handle the finances for now. I promise to repay any extra expenses later. That's why you signed it. His voice quieted. Oh, did I really say that? Maybe he was finally recalling his own words. I continued. I'm proceeding with the divorce. I can't wait around until your dream comes true. If we had never moved in with your mother, maybe you wouldn't have overextended yourself. For months, I've shouldered $2,000 in rent plus living expenses for 3 people, and I'm done with it. No, please don't leave me, he pleaded. You're the only one I have. I shook my head, even though he couldn't see me. I don't need a husband who won't pay bills, shirks housework, treats me with contempt, and only prioritizes his own family. If you resist filing the divorce papers, then we can let lawyers handle this. I'm not staying in this situation. With that, I ended the call. Afterward, Eric apparently unleashed his anger on his mother and Diana for the very first time in his life. He shouted, "Why would you do something so cruel that it forced Amanda to leave? Now I can't follow my dream, and I'm in a mountain of debt." His mother and Diana, who had never been reprimanded by him before, were shocked. My sister-in-law burst into tears, and his mother stood there speechless. At the same time, Eric's father announced he wouldn't tolerate them occupying his property for free. "If you can't manage the payments, leave this house by the end of the month," he declared firmly. "And if you're still here after that, I'm calling the police." This ultimatum drove them into a flurry of packing and desperation. Diana's husband came to collect her, and after hearing the whole story from his father-in-law, he apparently scolded Diana for her disgraceful behavior. Meanwhile, Eric and his mother had to move into a run-down apartment. Their current lifestyle is a huge downgrade, and they're both struggling to make ends meet. Eric gave up his burger shop apprenticeship in order to take on 2 part-time jobs to repay the money he owes me. His mother is now expected to contribute to their living costs. She also works multiple part-time jobs, just trying to cover the rent and day-to-day expenses for the 2 of them. From my perspective, after they spent so much time relying on me without any gratitude, it feels like they're finally receiving the consequences of their own actions. Being free from their exploitation has given me a sense that my life is opening up for the better, as though a bright future lies ahead. Going forward, I'm determined to reclaim the time I lost and focus on my own happiness.